The Capitals are off to a rough start of this road trip. Can they turn it around tonight in Seattle? I'll discuss next on this special live edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. I would love to talk Capitals hockey with you one-on-one, and we can do that on subtext. Just check the show description for more details. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about how the Capitals West Coast road trip isn't going exactly according to plan. We'll talk about that in the show a little bit later. We will talk about the Capitals game against the Oilers that, all things considered, it wasn't a great game, but Alex Ovechkin had a great game. And then we'll talk about how Ryan Leonard is the East All rookie team. But just to get it going here, we're talking about the Capitals on the road trip and headed out west here. And what are we talking about? We talked about at the trade deadline that this stretch of games here was going to be so important for the Capitals, that these are must-win games, that they're not out of it, but they need to make hay while the sun shines. They need to seize the opportunity and win as many games as possible. And what have they done? They've dropped two straight in not a real great fashion either. If we take a look at the big loss where they get blanked to the Jets, and you take a look at the game against the Oilers last night, it was a rough game, all things considered. But tonight is the night to turn it around as they take on the Kraken, who are coming off of two losses. And, you know, one of the things that was spoke of is that if the Capitals can come off this road trip with even a 500 record, well, then I guess it's not a complete loss. But this is a game tonight that they need to win. The game last night, no one really had them penciled to win. And the Jets, that was the same for that one as well. So the Capitals must win this game tonight. But talking about the game last night against the Oilers, and I'm going to go ahead and say this, that I hate the West Coast road trips as the games are so late. If you live on the East Coast, that game did not start until about 10:15, and it didn't wrap till well after midnight, more closer to 1 o'clock in the morning, but just a rough thing. So watching those games and you stay up late and you hope that they're going to find a way to win. And if we took a look at the game, it got off to a bad start for the Capitals, but they got back into it. I'll talk about it here a little bit more. The Caps were looking to pick up some much needed points on the Western road trip. What did they have to show for it? Nothing. After getting blanked by the Jets, the Caps fell to the Oilers in Edmonton by a score of 7-2. It was a tough game to watch. Right away, the Oilers get on the scoreboard first with all their firepower. It's not too surprising. The thing that bugged me is that the Capitals did not have a lot of pushback. It's one of the things I talk about in the show, that if the Capitals are playing well and they're playing opponent that isn't maybe as great as some of the other opponents, that they can stick to the script of what Spencer Carberry laid out for them. But when they get rattled, when they're kind of in that fight or flight mode, that is sometimes when they start flailing. The Oilers scored two quick goals, and I thought for a second the game was already over. And you might think to yourself, well, Dan, that's kind of a tough assessment on a team just because they're down by two. Listen, the Oilers are a really great hockey team, and that was evident last night as they had their way with the Capitals. And that's what it was all about. But that was not how the story was going to play out. I mean, I thought that the Oilers were going to just keep steamrolling the Capitals, but that wasn't the case. The Caps answered back with two goals from even Mironeschenko and Connor McMichael. Ivan with kind of that spin around move from the half wall. Most impressive, just kind of flinging it towards the net and good things happen, and it did for Mironeschenko. And then shortly thereafter, Connor McMichael finds the back of the net. But that was all she wrote as far as the Capitals offense, as far as goal scoring was concerned. Ultimately, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisatil, and Zach Hyman were too much for the Capitals. And, you take a look at this team, and you were coming off before this road trip, big wins against the Penguins, against the Blackhawks, and you think to yourself, this team is finally engaged. They're finally doing great things. And then you take a look at the standings, and you see that the Blackhawks aren't necessarily in the top. And you take a look at the Penguins, and they're even in a worse position than the Capitals, and things kind of get drawn into focus. That, the Capitals can play really good against poor teams. Oftentimes they struggle against really great teams. Now, there has been exceptions to that rule. The Capitals have risen above and won against really big opponents, but all things considered, this road trip is kind of playing out exactly the way that I thought it was going to. The Capitals were simply outskated, outscored, and just better than them. And some people are saying, well, the Oilers got lucky. If they could do it all over again, the Capitals would beat them. Nonsense. I mean, you could have a complete redo of the next night, and I don't think the Capitals would fare any better. It's just they don't have the raw pieces out there. I mean, it's like entering into a war, and the battle that you're fighting, your opponent has, automatic weapons and rocket launchers, and you're entering into it with a BB gun and a 22. Well, you're not going to fare that well. I think we've seen what we need to see and summarize what this team is about. And it's not just me. I've seen Tarek El-Bashir kind of already putting out articles as well, talking about that the season's winding up. What should the Capitals do in the off season? That where a lot of Capitals fans and even the beat writers are resigned to the fact that this season is more about assessment, what players will come back next season, that kind of thing, that, their kind of last Hail Mary attempt for making a push for the Stanley Cup playoffs is kind of is turning into a mirage, shall we say. If you want to reserve judgment until after the trip, I think the conclusion will be the same, as it's going to be rough. They play tonight against the Kraken. They have the Flames. They have the Canucks in there. It is going to be some tough sledding for the Capitals. Tell me if you've heard this before, but the Caps spent too much time on the PK. The Caps gave up 3 power play goals on the night. And watching the game, it was a tough thing. I watched about 2 periods last night. I watched one in the morning when I got up because, hey, I got to work in the morning just like the rest of you guys. But a tough game for the Capitals as they were fighting. They tried to get back in there. Alex Ovechkin was leading the charge, and I'll talk about him a little bit later. But ultimately, it was not enough to stand up to the best of the best in the NHL. Now, before we blame Darcy Kuemper and just look at the box score, do yourself a favor and actually watch the game. I've already heard people talking about on various social media platforms that the Capitals should have gone with Lindgren and they would have won the game. Quite the contrary. They aired Darcy Kuemper out to dry. He had to make some tough saves. He was under duress. There was blown, plays out there, coughing up the puck. That I think that ultimately, Darcy did what he could do. Am I going to say that he wouldn't like to have a couple of those goals back? Of course. But all things considered, I do not place the blame on the game last night squarely on Darcy Kuemper. There were odd man breaks, coughed up puck, and left Darcy Kuemper out to dry. It was a lot to ask from Darcy after getting his first start in 6 games. Ultimately, Kuemper saved 30 of 37. And, the proof's in the pudding. It's in the analytics. They were outshot 37-25. The Caps left the Oilers' premier goal scorers in McDavid and Draisatil too many opportunities to find the back of the net. Hyman had a natural hat trick, while McDavid and Draisatil finished with 4 points each. The Oilers also got scoring from Warren Foegele and former Capital Connor Brown, who had not scored a goal for quite some time. It's interesting he was able to do it against his former team. But talking about the game and ultimately why I'm going live, well, because the game got done so late last night, and I wanted to get this podcast talking about the Capitals play before the game tonight came out. So what the Capitals need to do is dial in. This is the game to win. At least the first one I'm going to say on the road trip, is we knew that the Jets were going to be tough. We knew the Oilers were going to be tough, and they were that, and then some. But this is a game against a Kraken team that, isn't one of the best ones, and I know you could fall into a trap game Ultimately, I hope that is not the case and the Capitals can pick up a big dub. All right, so coming up here after the break, we will talk about that despite the game, didn't have the outlook that the Capitals were looking for. They got outworked in almost every way possible. Alex Ovechkin attempted to take the bull by the horns. I'll discuss coming up. Grocery bills are so expensive these days, but now they don't have to be. Start getting cash back on your grocery shopping with the free Ibotta app and get cash back every time you shop. Do you love making money but also love spending money? Don't we all? Now you can make money while you spend it every time you shop with Ibotta. Spring break is right around the corner, which means you're going shopping, but don't shop for the big trip and get nothing in return. Make sure you're getting cash back every time you shop. So that's the big thing. Money is spread thin nowadays. Why not use Ibotta? Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies to toys. So you can make sure that you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 a year. That's some pretty sweet savings. That could go a long way to cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. So you can buy that flight you've been eyeing, that game you've been dying to go to, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. So do it. Save some money and do it with Ibotta. I do it. I love it. I think you should as well. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONNHL when you register. Just go to the App Store or the Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONNHL. That's Ibotta in the Google Play Store or the App Store and use code LOCKEDONNHL. As you know, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. Baseball fans, mark your calendars for March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern for the best MLB season preview, coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. On March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern, be the first to get local insight from the MLB local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Once again, find it on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is a special live edition of Locked On Capitals. Well, why? The game last night was so late. And I wanted to get this podcast in tonight before the game was played, and the implications, what's at stake for the Capitals. And you hear it, it's cliche all the time, must win game. The Capitals really need to win this game. There is a lot at stake on this road trip, and they've already dropped 2 games. If they can find a way to pick up a win tonight, well, that would be going in the right direction. And I think there's a pretty good chance, considering that the Kraken have also dropped 2 in a row. But talking about Alex Ovechkin, a guy that likes to take the bull by the horns, and ultimately why he wears the C on his chest, he did what he could do. And also talking about him last night, getting 7 shots on goal. If you take a look at the box score, he was the guy that was making the attempt to try to get it done. Now, listen, Ivan Mironeschenko getting the goal, that was good. Connor McMichael, those were all guys that were trying to keep pace with a really great Oilers team. And, one of the guys that's kind of surprising that I think that Spencer Carberry and a lot of the other people necessarily didn't think that he was going to have as big of a showing as he has is Ivan Mironeschenko. He had, 2 goals already. And you take a look at that goal last night against the Oilers from the half wall, just kind of spinning it and flinging it at the net, finds pay dirt. A lot to be excited about. But Alex Ovechkin in particular, while Ovi didn't score a goal, he had 7 shots on goal. He also has 29 points in his last 28 games. And what is some of the things we remember about Alex Ovechkin is he got off to his slowest start in his entire career this season. Then all of a sudden we came to the All-Star break. He went out to Dubai, rode around on a camel, came back, said, the thing that I didn't think about hockey. I didn't think about systems. I didn't think about coaching. I just took my mind off the game, and he came back a changed man, and he has been that man Ever since the All-Star break concluded, he has been one of the key contributors. Ovechkin picked up his career point 1,534. Quite an evening for Alex Ovechkin. He also passed Joe Sakic for the ninth most road points of all time, 742. So that is what Alex Ovechkin is doing. He's continuing to knock down one milestone after the other. And the keys for success for tonight against the Kraken is an engaged Alex Ovechkin and more of a youth infusion. It's paying dividends. This team got younger this season based on necessity. And what do I mean when I say that? Is injury. We take a look of Nick Backstrom stepping away from hockey indefinitely, Evgeny Kuznetsov getting waived and subsequently joining the Hurricanes. You see TJ Oshie missing a substantial amount of time, even though he's back, that we finally were able to get a look at some of these young players that we've heard about for quite some time. So a big night coming up tonight for the Capitals. Another late one. Yay. I love that. Don't you guys love that? We're hoping that the Capitals can pick up a dub, but just taking a look at some of the comments here based on the fact that this is a live show. Taking a look at it here, Owen here said that I was supposed there were quite a few Caps at Rogers. I think what he meant to say is I was supposed to be there at the game, and there were quite a few Caps fans at Rogers. And one of the things that I know for sure is that the Capitals fans travel well. Oftentimes I see them in Minnesota, and there's always a great showing. They are kind of what I would call a national team, that they have a fan base spread throughout the United States. So I do expect that you will see quite a few Capitals fans at the game tonight in Seattle. I would really love to go to that arena, Climate Pledge Arena, I believe the name is there, and see the Kraken, because a different place to see a game. And if you haven't been out to that part of the country, it's very scenic. But as far as Ovechkin and the Capitals are concerned, they need to be engaged. They need to play a complete 60-minute game if they have any hopes of salvaging this road trip. All is not lost. It is going to be a tall order. Make no mistake about it. I think the Kraken, you don't want to underestimate them. It's not like they're a deplorable team. So I don't want them to fall into a trap game. You take a look at the Canucks, who are one of the best in the National Hockey League, and then the Flames, another one that the Capitals should win. Let's hope they can pick up a big dub tonight. All right, so coming up here after the break, we're talking about the future. Since the present isn't as great as I'd hoped it be, the future with Ryan Leonard on this team seems to be one of the bright spots in the future for the Caps. I'll talk about him coming up. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So talking about the future for the Capitals as we take a look at this season. It was a season that I think a lot of fans thought it was going to be, that they weren't going to make it to the playoffs. And it does appear that it is going to be the second year in a row that the Capitals don't make it to the playoffs. But there is hope on the horizon. And some of that biggest hopes, though, the biggest rays of hope out there is Ryan Leonard. And when he decides to join the Capitals, I think the Capitals will be that much better. But Ryan Leonard named to Hockey East All-Rookie Team. This guy has done nothing but knock it out of the park at every stop along the way. We saw what he did at Junior Champions there. We've seen what he's done at Boston College. Will next season be the year for Ryan Leonard. Listen, if you listen to what Brian Maclellan said, he thought he could go pro what he saw from him in training camp. It's just up to him. And I don't think that we want to put the pressure on Ryan Leonard to go pro next season if he doesn't want to, but I think that would be a really good thing. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I would really like to see Leonard playing in Washington next season. I know that's just my want, but I think he's ready, and GM Brian Maclellan thinks he's ready too. It was Kuznetsov's presser when they were talking about him getting waived. He was asked about Ryan Leonard, and he said, I like his game. I thought he was ready to go pro at training camp. So I think that, the ball is in your court, Ryan Leonard. You know what to do. It's ultimately up to him if he wants to go pro next season. But Leonard's season at Boston College couldn't really have gone much better. The Eagles' victory over New Hampshire Boston College finished up their 18th Hockey East regular season title and their first since 2021. So a big win for Boston College over New Hampshire. And I think that, this guy is just amassing a really great resume, and he has not even taken the ice under the big lights for the Capitals yet. I am super pumped when this guy joins the team. There are, quite a few players that are just, I'm going to say a year or two out that are going to make this Capitals team markedly better once they hit the ice. Leonard is a 2023 first-round pick that appears to have a lot of the same characteristics as Tom Wilson. And, I hate to pigeonhole him. I hate to paint him with a broad brush, but he does seem to have a lot of the same characteristics. A big guy, a physicality, a leader, has a bit of a snarl to his game. But actually, all things considered, I think that once he hits his stride, will be a better player than Tom Wilson. And I know that a lot of Tom Wilson fans, you might want to cover your ears right now, but that is in fact the case. He has the raw skill set that I think he could be one heck of a hockey player once he hits the big team. Leonard ended up with 48 total points this season, 25 goals, 23 assists in 34 games for the Eagles. The fourth highest total in the nation. So to say he's one of the best would be an understatement. He is a huge player playing for Boston College, and I think that once he's ready, look out the rest of the NHL, look out the rest of the Metro. We have a dynamic player waiting in the wings. And this season alone, he had a 17-game point streak. During that span, he scored 31 points, 15 goals, 16 assists, and the Eagles won 12 games in a row in Hockey East play. So it's going to be interesting. Weigh in on your thoughts, Capitals fans. This is a live episode. I'll go to your comments. Do you think it is going to be time for Ryan Leonard next season, or do you think it will be one more season? Because of his breakout season, he was named to Hockey East All-Rookie Team on Wednesday. He will be joined by Boston College netminder and his line mates Will Smith and Gabe Perreault. So it is going to be, a big thing for Ryan Leonard. For the thing I would tell him is, just soak in this opportunity, take it for all it is, and, continue to just create a great resume. And just know that you have, the signing off of the GM of the Capitals, that when you're ready to go, we're ready to have you on this team. And I think it would be just a really great thing for the Capitals and Ryan Leonard. Again, I'm super excited, and I'm really hoping that it is going to be next season. All right, so the game tonight, again, to wrap up this episode, has utmost importance. The Capitals are still not officially out of it yet, but they're not exactly doing themselves any favors by dropping 2 in a row on a very important road trip that has great implications. But for me, what is being drawn into focus is how they're playing when they're playing against truly great opponents. I'm talking the Jets. I'm talking the Oilers. And as a Capitals fan, their play on the ice, if that does not have you concerned, I don't know what will. But we're hoping for, an about face for the Capitals, that they can find a way to pick up a win against a Kraken team that's not one of the better teams in the NHL. It would be a huge 2 points if they can find a way to win it in regulation. Let's hope they can do it. All right, listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are ultimately what makes this show successful. Now, listen, tomorrow's podcast will be a later one as well because, well, why? The game doesn't start till 10 again tonight. So it will be a later podcast. And I thank you for all your guys' patience. 9 times out of 10, I have a podcast talking about the game immediately following the game. But I think you guys understand it's a 10 o'clock start. It doesn't get done till 1 o'clock in the morning. That's just the way life is. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.